I'm home. What's going on, you guys? It's Jay, and we are returning to the golden child of FromSoft. The one who started it all. Okay, maybe not entirely. Dark Souls 1, baby. We are continuing our little series where I'm replaying all the FromSoft games in no particular order and just sitting down and talking about them. We've only done Elden Ring so far, so if you like this video, feel free to go check that one out too. But when I decided to do this series, I was really looking forward to replaying Dark Souls 1. It's been a long time since my last playthrough, probably 5 or more years or so. So I copped the remaster on Steam because I was too lazy to fix the original version of the game, and we were off.
Hello there.
Undead Asylum. Can it get any more iconic than this? I remember when I was a young lad cluelessly wandering around this area. Oh my fucking god. Little baby Jay trying to slap the shit out of the asylum demon with my broken pencil stick. Heart rate through the roof until I ultimately die, barely making a dent on his health bar. Did that ever happen to you guys? Okay, now I know you're lying. This time around, I knew how to get through though, obviously. Come on, guys. But the amount of nostalgia I felt going through Undead Asylum again was insane. It's such a great starting area. It helps you get warmed up with the game's combat and feel. This game is way slower and less fluid compared to something like Elden Ring or Dark Souls 3, and that's not really a bad thing at all in my opinion. The combat in Dark Souls just feels heavier, and you can really feel the weight of your attacks. But anyway, we'll talk about combat later in the video. But Undead Asylum is a great starting zone. It really sets the tone for the rest of the game. But you know what's even better than Undead Asylum? Firelinked Shrine, baby. Do I need to say more? You got a cozy bonfire, a cozy view, douchebag NPCs, a cemetery filled with skeletons in a bottomless pit, all brought together by a banging soundtrack. I gotta be honest, I got really giddy when I landed back in Firelink Shrine. Obviously, you can get really caked up by doing a quick run into New Londo and the catacombs, but I wanted to progress as normally as possible. Well, after I ran and got the old reliable Swayhander. But I always thought it was so cool how you can run to later areas of the game at such a low level. Dark Souls 1 is probably the best level design in any FromSoft game. Having each area stitched together to create one cohesive map really makes the world feel massive and alive. And even though it's nowhere near the size of something like Elden Ring, it still feels massive in its own way, and I think it's due to this design choice. There's so many horror stories of new players running down to the wrong areas and getting stuck because obviously Dark Souls is a FromSoft game, so there's not really any direction. And one thing I gotta say right off the bat is I love how quickly you can progress through this game, man. I love Elden Ring and its size, don't get me wrong, but Dark Souls 1 isn't such a huge commitment when you want to replay it. If you know what you're doing, you can easily run through the game in less than 10 hours, 20 hours if you're taking things slowly and want to see everything. I slowly went through the game once and then tried to speed run as fast as I could the second time, and it was so fun, man. I think Elden Ring is a great length, but you gotta be in the mood to commit 50 plus hours for one playthrough. While on the other hand, Dark Souls, you could easily beat it in a weekend if you felt in the mood for it. This was something I didn't really expect to appreciate as much as I did while replaying the game. So after I snagged Old Reliable, we were ready to start clearing out the first zone, Undead Burg. And I've been going back and forth on what the best area in the game is, and I gotta say, man, I think it's Undead Burg. Everything is so well thought out in this entire area. It flows so well from bonfire to bonfire, and it does a great job at introducing shortcuts to the player. And yeah, the bosses are kind of mid. I think the Taurus demon is especially annoying just due to the arena being this narrow bridge. And for some reason, I always struggle with him because I tend to forget how to dive attack, even though I just learned how to do it in Undead Asylum like 20 minutes ago. I just really liked how the zone flows though. After you take down the Taurus demon and make your way to the bell tower and unlock your first shortcut to Firelink Shrine, it's just really special and you feel so damn good about yourself. Also, I remember when I first found out if you shot the annoying ass dragon's tail from under the bridge, you get the Drake sword. I thought it was absolutely insane, and that sword really helped me out back when I was just a little baby sprout. Undead Burg is perfect though. I wouldn't change a thing about this area, and it's a great send off into the rest of the game. Even though I think it's the best area, Dark Souls has a lot of other great areas too. Obviously, Anor Londo, I mean, look at it. It's beautiful. It's also such a huge transition from anything else you've seen in the game so far. I would have given this the best zone in the game if it wasn't for having to run on these tiny little rooftops while being shot at with these annoying giant fucking arrows. I don't have any problems with any of the other zones in the first half of the game, really. I think the depths are spooky and it's a fun zone to clear out and explore. And although I really dislike the poison in Blighttown, it's really easy to navigate once you know where to go. You can also run through it really quickly if you start on the other side of the zone closer to Firelink Shrine. And Sen's Fortress is, well, Sen's Fortress. But these are all really solid zones in the first half of the game. This is where we get to one of my biggest complaints about Dark Souls, which is I do think some of the later zones fall off a little bit. However, let me just say that some of them have some really good aspects that I think outweigh the negatives. I really like the design of the Dude's Archives, and I think the Tomb of Giants can be really atmospheric. Yeah, it's dark as shit down there, but you can get a light source to make it easier. I feel like the darkness is annoying, but it actually makes sense because you're literally on your way to fight Gravelord Nito. I would hope the zone is dark and spooky before you fight him. But there's just one zone I really can't stand, and that's Lost Izalith. Because it's lava and it has more lava. Lost Izalith really feels like a huge step down compared to every other zone in the game. But to give FromSoft some grace, they did say that this zone was rushed. And if they had the opportunity, I feel like they would have improved it before the launch of the game. But it just feels really bland and uninspired compared to all the other zones in the game. With all that being said though, does it hold the game back in any way? No, absolutely not. Like I said at the start of the video, everyone loves the world design of Dark Souls and how it all interconnects. And with all the zones being so uniquely designed, it only helps push that even further. And all of these zones, Lost Izalith included, are all so damn memorable. Well, actually everything about Dark Souls is memorable. But even before I replayed the game, I could have easily have listed off almost every single zone and boss. And if that doesn't scream good game design, I don't know what does. Alright, now before we talk about the bosses, I want to really quickly talk about the gameplay and the character builds in Dark Souls. I always forget how balanced this game is. Literally like 90% of the weapons in the game are viable and can be used in your entire playthrough. Dark Souls has that classic FromSoft build variation that we all know and love. So I went with a pure strength build like I usually do, and then I went back and did a pyromancy dexterity build that was also super fun to use. This is another reason why I love the time commitment to Dark Souls. Due to the game being relatively shorter, it allows for even more replayability. When I was done with my strength build, I still wanted more and immediately started another playthrough right after. I know I talked a little bit earlier about how Dark Souls 1 feels a bit slower compared to the other FromSoft games, and I think that's very true, but I think this combat has its own charm. It's always so satisfying when you land a hit. I also found myself getting punished a lot when I started playing, like a lot.
What?
Besides trying to get rid of my jump attack habit from Elden Ring, I also just wasn't super used to the timing of the combat. But in general, Dark Souls has that classic FromSoft gameplay that has pushed this series to its insane heights. And it was actually a bit refreshing coming back to this game after recently playing a bunch of Elden Ring. Like I said earlier, I didn't play Dark Souls 1 in a really long time before this video. I had this weirdly skewed idea that I was going to have a really hard time with some of the more notorious boss fights. I don't know if it was just PTSD from when I was a kid going through this game or what, but I'm happy to report after killing every boss twice that, yeah man, some of them like Manus can be pretty hard, but they were way more fairly designed than I originally thought going into this. I think Dark Souls still has some of the best boss fights in all of FromSoft. So I'm just gonna get this one out of the way really quickly. Artorias, best boss fight in the entire game, absolutely perfect, no questions asked. He's difficult but not frustrating, there's no bullshit, just an overall beautiful boss fight. You also got the iconic boss fight with Ornstein and Smo, and dare I say, this is one of the only times I think FromSoft has gotten a duo boss fight right. Ornstein and Smo in particular really scared me when I was a kid, and I can remember why. But after revisiting this boss fight, it's honestly so enjoyable. I really love the music in this fight, and the second phase transition is just so good. Another boss worth mentioning is Gwyn. I think Gwyn is a perfect final boss. The music is god tier, the arena is god tier, his design is overall really cool. He is a little easier than I remembered, but he's still got some hard-hitting attacks. I know he's kind of a joke if you're a parry master, but I'm absolutely dog shit at parrying, so. Overall though, Dark Souls has some amazing boss fights through and through. A lot of them are so iconic and for good reason, but there's one boss that I hate. One boss that is iconic for all the wrong reasons. Is it the two dogs in the Capra Demon fight? No. Is it the weak piece of shit pinwheel? No, it's the fucking Bed of Chaos. I bet you guessed that one pretty easily though, let's be honest. And if you don't cheese this fight, you must really be a masochist or something. This fight just sucks. I'm so happy that FromSoft learned from their mistakes with this fight. The boss fight is manageable if you just save and quit after every phase, but it just really sucks that you gotta cheese it to make it actually manageable, but it is what it is. Luckily though, all the other bosses really carry the Bed of Chaos, especially the good ones. But fuck man, replaying Dark Souls really reinvigorated my hate for that god-awful zone down and that god-awful boss. But the moments where you beat Artorias or Gwyn really overshadow the Bed of Chaos fight. Surprise, surprise, Dark Souls is still a masterpiece. Who would have thought? A masterpiece that has saved lives, apparently. And although Dark Souls didn't save my life, it taught me when I was a kid to learn from my mistakes and not to get frustrated while gaming. I think what really impacted me the most, though, is Dark Souls made me want to try out new games. I played Dark Souls on a whim when I was a kid, and it really captivated me. I only really played Call of Duty and Halo up until that point. Ever since then, though, I've played all kinds of games and I've gotten into genres I originally wouldn't have really cared about. I went from a filthy casual to an absolute chatted up gamer, and it was all thanks to Dark Souls. It felt really good to replay Dark Souls though, and I'm not really surprised at how beautifully it's held up. Dark Souls will always have a special place in my heart because it was the start of my love for FromSoft games, and I know that's how many others feel too. If you haven't played Dark Souls in a while and you got some time over the weekend to spare, I say play it, and I'm sure you'll immediately get sucked back in just like I did. Anyways, you guys, I think it's a great place to call the video. If you made it this far and you enjoyed, thank you. I got some other non-FromSoft videos in the works, but after that, we're gonna tackle the legendary Dark Souls 2, which I'm actually scared for. But anyways, you guys, I'll talk to you soon, and yeah, peace.